always happens. You get started and the door opens and closes. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay. Just by show of hands, government contractors? Okay. And everybody else, not yet. And everybody else is government? Government, contractor? Military. Same thing. You're part of the government. Okay, so this is a little dry. It's an introduction to CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model. I am an instructor. I currently am instructing the certified CMMC Professional classes. Those are the people that can be auditors or assessors. They can also be consultants if you like. And then I'll go through some of that when we talk about the roles. I've been teaching about one class a month, which is kind of intense because it's a 5-day, 8 hours a day class. I'm breaking it up with, I started a small company, as you saw here, Educare. I'm offering some classes broken up into 2 days a week or once a week or something like that. I've even had some questions about doing night classes or weekend classes. So Educare is a licensed training provider, so we're licensed by the CMMC AB, and we'll talk a little bit about more of that. So a little bit about me. I got about 35 years or so in the security sector, information security, information assurance, cybersecurity, and I promised to retire for the last time when they changed the name again. I'm certified again as an instructor and a compliance assessor. I'm on the board of AFCEA International, so they were nice enough to invite me to speak to you all. I'm also the vice chair of the Homeland Security Committee, and I invite you all to come to some of the Homeland Security events. Look us up. If you're interested in, if you're not a member of AFCEA, join. If you're interested in Homeland Security beyond just the military and how do we secure the homeland, please get in touch with us. I'm also the chair of the Marine Technology Society's Maritime Cyber and Security and Infrastructure Committee. You see down here a little bit, I'm a recovering mariner. I was a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy. I sailed for a while, got involved with the Navy. Navy got me involved with computers, and then I got involved with information assurance. So I got a BS from Merchant Marine Academy, and then I have a master's from George Washington University, Systems Engineering. And I matriculated but did not do my thesis for my PhD. Just got tired, I guess. A serial entrepreneur, so I've been in and out of small businesses for a long time. Worked for a couple of big businesses, but feel more comfortable in small businesses. And actually this business and this presentation is kind of focused on pulling in and helping out the small business community, because this is a big, daunting task, even for a big business. My wife and I of 40 years have 3 grown children. My baby is a surgeon in the hospital he was born in, which is cool. I got a 3-year-old granddaughter and a 5-month-old grandson. And I'm soon will be enjoying more the boating, the sailing, fishing, golf, and relaxing on the beach, because we just bought a home in North Carolina. Looking forward to an interactive conversation. You can break it up. If I think there's something that's coming up later, we'll talk about that. So you've probably seen this model. This is the CMMC model, and you can see the shift from the 5 levels of maturity to the 3 levels of maturity. Don't tell anybody I said this, but we kind of, we changed administration, so we got to put our thumbprint on that, and we kind of moved the deck chairs around on the Titanic a little bit. Boat is still sinking. My personal opinion: this is not government. I am not representing the government. I don't represent the CMMC AB. I represent myself. I think the worst part of this is it delayed everything for about a year, maybe 2 years, and I think that's a problem. So CMMC was created by Carnegie Mellon Software Institute, Engineering Institute, and the Johns Hopkins, APL, with funding from OUSD, Acquisition and Sustainment. As you know, the program is migrating, or maybe formally completed the migration to the CIO's office. So what is this all about? The Defense Department, and you guys all know, right? Most of you are old enough to remember 9/11, and after 9/11, we went from a more sharing, and we even had a CIO that said we're leaving the era of information security and entering the information sharing phase. Well, that didn't work out so well, and sharing wasn't even an issue anymore because we're sharing without even knowing it. And the government became very internal. You know, CAC card became DOD only, PIV became government only, and the rest of you were on your own. You know, we got some guidance, we got some mandates, but I used to have a slide that listed all the mandates, and there was one paragraph that was always the same in every mandate. That was the waiver paragraph that said, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Just tell us. So it didn't help us get to where we needed to be. So what we're trying to do now is start with the DIB. I think this is going to expand further. I hope it's going to expand further. We're going to try to normalize cybersecurity as a way of doing business. And why are we doing this? Well, the DIB is huge, right? It includes a huge amount of contractors, subcontractors, vendors. So it's everybody from the Northrop Grummans and the Boeings and everybody else. And the mom and pop shop in the Midwest who downloads information from the Navy Supply Group or the DOD or whatever, sticks it in their printer, their 3D printer, and builds something to spec, right? And all that information is sensitive information. It's something that we need to keep to ourselves. And we're really getting our lunch eaten by our adversaries. We'll talk more about that. So not only are we focused on the DoD supply chain, but the supply chain as a whole. And you can imagine, as a former mariner, the supply chain means and most people don't even know we're a maritime nation. Most people don't even know we have a maritime industry. But we do, right? It's weak. It's not well funded. It's not well supported by the federal government. But when something like what happened in LA not too long ago happens, we all feel it. And that's when we get it. The gas prices go up, we all feel it. So we got to understand the supply chain, and not only the effects of the supply chain getting stalled or slowed down, but also the effects of the things that are happening with losing our IP. Vast complex, spanning the globe. We're everywhere, right? Northrop is everywhere. Everybody's everywhere. It really is a global economy. But we have to do something to focus a little bit more, I think a lot more, on our national economy and our national interests. And while we're worried about modern weapons systems, so there's two people I talk to, right? I talk to the DoD folks who are trying to get their supply chain to protect the weapon systems and the technology from the DoD. And this includes everybody. I did a big job for Texas A&M 2 years ago, and I was amazed. First of all, I'm amazed that $60 billion a year goes into research from the government into our universities. There's almost no protection. It's really, I mean, Chinese officers are sent here. They speak very well English. They understand our customs. They talk to a professor. I really like your research, and I'd like to help you with your. Well, are you a student here? No, I'm applying to be a student here, but I'd really like to help. And they welcome him into the lab. They got USB tokens, and they're walking out the door with all our information. So we got to protect that information. That's the DoD perspective. What about the commercial perspective? Our intellectual property, which most companies, small and large, count on for their stock prices, for their doing business. Why are we buying all kinds of equipment that is being built on our technology for 2 cents on the dollar in Mexico, in China, wherever it is being done. And that's because they're not doing the research. They don't have to pay for the research. They're just stealing it from us. So what are their motivations? So from a DoD perspective, they want to figure out how to defeat us, right? They're going to build a better mousetrap, or at least a mousetrap as good as ours. They steal the technology to avoid the cost of R&D, and they minimize the time that the U.S. military has to be superior in technology. And they are catching up. If you read some of the information that's coming out of a lot of our intelligence communities, and whatever you have at whatever level you can get it at, it's scary. It's hurtful. So they have the picture here. This is one of the class pictures out of there, and that's the F-35 versus the Chinese J-31. You see anything similar? Other than the fact that the Chinese don't care about really the pilot's comfort, right? They'll take out some of the human interface stuff and some of the comfort features, but it's pretty much the same. And actually, I don't know. I don't have the rating for that, but I heard it's even faster and more maneuverable. But most of the blueprint came right from the government. But you don't have to believe me that this is a problem.
The biggest threat we face as a country from a counterintelligence perspective is from the People's Republic of China, and especially the Chinese Communist Party. They are targeting our innovation, our trade secrets, our intellectual property on a scale that's unprecedented in history. They have a bigger hacking program than that of every other major nation combined. They have stolen more of Americans' personal and corporate data than every nation combined. It affects everything from agriculture to aviation to high tech to healthcare, pretty much every sector of our economy. Anything that makes an industry tick, they target.
Every sector of our economy. I mean, that's just amazing. And we do have to be worried about this. We have to be worried about this, of course, from a national security perspective, of course, from a national economic perspective, but also from a commercial perspective. And as we keep moving jobs and we keep moving money overseas, and we keep losing IP overseas, we're getting out of the business of protecting ourselves. If you haven't seen that 60 Minutes, it's a long interview. I think they're going to post these slides. I can't post the video, but I can post the URL. I strongly urge you to go look at that whole video. It's very interesting. I saw Director Ray speak. Texas A&M has an annual FBI, DOD, overall cybersecurity forum down in College Station every year. Some of the things they do in the classified meetings are even more puckering, so if you get a chance, sign up for that. If you want to know how to sign up for that, let me know. So when we think of the DoD, we think of the Defense Industrial Base. Most people think of Northrop Grumman, Boeing, all the big names, Booz Allen, Leidos, etc. But the vast amount of people and the vast amount of companies that support the Defense Industrial Base, are small and medium-sized companies, right? And again, it's not just the weapon system, it's all of the parts, all of the subsystems, again, all the way down to the circuit boards that may be printed on a 3D printer and other things printed. So again, the example for the F-35, what can be sensitive? Everything from performance characteristics, what we used to call the test and evaluation master plan, which tells you everything and all the things you have to meet in the middle and all the integration details. I mean, everything is available, and if it's not protected, it's easy to replicate, including schedule information. And some people think, well, I'm a contracting officer. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I'm a contracting officer with a contract. No, these guys want to know when we're launching. They want to know when we're pushing this stuff out. So while it may be unclassified, that doesn't mean it's not sensitive. And we're going to talk about what that means. Okay, so the CMMC program, again, initiated to verify defense contractors and cybersecurity contracts of cybersecurity preparedness and effectiveness. It's not an answer to the problem unless the industries take it on board and move forward with it and understand what this whole maturity piece of it is. I've been doing this for a long time. Everybody, okay, give me a box, I put it in my rack, and that's going to protect me. That's not cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has a bit to do with IT. There's a lot of IT in it, but that's not what's going to protect you. What's going to protect you is a programmatic approach, a risk management approach to getting the job done. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. It provides assurance that the DIB can protect sensitive information. So what are they going to do? They're going to put a DFAR at first. There's a FAR in the works. They're going to make a contractual obligation that you protect this information. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means, again, up front. It's basically a 5-year program to get up to speed. It's probably going to take longer than five years, but we got to start. And again, that's why I wasn't so happy about the 1.0 to 2.0 switch. We lost a little bit of time, but it's not too late to catch up. And because things change so much, especially technology, we got to worry about what we're protecting in the next 3 to 5 years and 10 years, et cetera. Pretty much everything that's out there now is probably in the communist hands. It's a cultural shift. Okay, again, I got a slide in a little bit. Everybody said, okay, we'll bring in a CISO, we'll bring in a CIO, and we'll make, as a matter of fact, I had a phone call with a fellow not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, about CMMC and what they need to do, and basically he said, well, I'll have my IT guy call you. That's not what we want to talk to. Today, what we want to talk to is we want to talk to the CEOs, we want to talk to the C-suite, whether that's a board of a public company or a private company, it doesn't matter. This is a cultural change. The other cultural change is, if you remember, years ago we had all these different pieces of what weapon systems and how we built them, and then we had a pillar called cybersecurity. Now we got to put the foundation of all we do, the documentation, the design, everything that has to be have a foundation of cybersecurity underneath it. So cybersecurity wants to be the baseline. And again, while DoD is kind of the trailblazer for this CMMC program, I believe, and there are already indications, that other agencies are going to buy into this. Now, are they going to buy in with the CMMC AB and do exactly what DoD is doing? Presumably not. But hopefully they will take the same cultural aspect of this and move it down the chain. So what type of information do you have that's sensitive? And again, you see this big, broad definition of federal contract information. And within the contract, you might have controlled unclassified information. And then within controlled unclassified information, you have subcategories like controlled technical information, export controlled information. This is all providing you with a construct on what you got to look for. One of the people out there, they were talking about, they have this cloud system that manages your data in the cloud and in your. We need to start thinking about how do we properly tag information so that our computers can do the protection based on the sensitivity of that documentation. One of the biggest failings we do with cybersecurity is we throw people into it, whether they're IT folks, whether they're engineers, whether they're lawyers, or whether they're contracts people, and we say, go at it, man. Go do the things you're supposed to do. With very little education and very little understanding. So again, another link here. Probably a lot of you in this room have already gone there, but this is the security awareness training. Everybody in every company should at least go through this free training. I think it's OSD, but it just talks about the different types of sensitive data that you can encounter. If nobody knows what a controlled technical information looks like, how do you expect them to protect it, right? So under the CUI, there's a CUI registry. There's actually two registries. There's a general registry put out by NARA, and there's the link to look at that. And then there's a DoD registry, which you need logon capability. I think it's CAC enabled, and it probably has other multi-factor authentication capability. And that's at the dodcui.mil. NARA maintains the registration that is publicly available to everyone, and then, as I said, access to the DoD. The DoD registry is pretty much mirrors the NARA one, but it's a little bit more specific to what you would see. And it's broken up by categories. It has the markings, like I said earlier. If you can get the markings thing down, just the marking things, and then put in a computer system that if it sees a certain marking, it protects it a certain way, you go a long way. People make mistakes, right? Try to automate this as much as possible so you don't have to make those mistakes. Okay, the False Claims Act. So how are we going to enforce this? So in CMMC 1.0, we were going to assess everybody. We're going to assess level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Well, you see, we shift from 5 levels to 3 levels. So level 1 is basically the same as level 1 was in 1.0. There's a handful, I think 7 controls and practices. And we decided, because presumably because a lot of people complained, that, okay, we're going to go back to self-assessment for level 1. Okay, so that means you're going to hire somebody like me maybe, or put somebody in your organization through a school that I might be instructing, so they understand all of the requirements for at least level 1, probably level 2, so they can prepare you for the level 2 assessment. Then you're going to go up to the OSD website, SPARS, that you're going to upload your grade, and it's still not what I would call robust. It's kind of, do you do this? Yes or no? It doesn't promote, in my mind anyhow, any kind of real diligence, but take it seriously, because what the DoD intends, what the government intends, is to take this old False Claims Act, and if you're under contract, and if you said you scored 120 on your CMMC level 1 self-assessment, but you really only scored about 60, they're coming after you. The worst thing they can do to you, of course, is to pull your contract and to make you ineligible to bid on other contracts, or at least let other DoD components know this guy's not in. It's kind of like the scores you get, if you're familiar with, as a contractor, the scores you get on the contracting side. So how do you know? How do you know what you're supposed to protect? So the most critical part of this legal obligation is in your contract, right? The DFARS is going to be there. Everything's going to be there and tell you what you need to follow. If it's not explicit in your contract, ask your contracting officer or ask your prime contractor, because there's this other clause that comes with the False Claims Act. It's called the Christian Doctrine. That means you're accountable, even if you are not explicitly told in the contract what you're supposed to do. So there's a lot of information. So that's why you got to read all this stuff, or find somebody that can plow through this stuff. Listen, I've been doing FSMA and FedRAMP and all this stuff for years and years. My company, my first company, was audited once a quarter by anybody that wanted to knock on the door, between Justice Department, DoD, and everybody else, because we were a program of record. I had a secure data center. It's voluminous. And you all know how the government documents are, right? This document tells you to do this, and then this document that is referred in this document tells you something, but it doesn't sound like this. And then it refers you to another document that refers you back to the other document. it's kind of like going to a lawyer, right? Nobody likes going to a lawyer, but you got to get the lawyer to read the stuff so he understands what's in the actual document. So I propose that it's best that you get somebody that's good at this, that understands this, that can help you through the process. It doesn't have to be expensive. And shop around, right? There are small shops like mine that are just doing this. I'm doing it because I've been doing it for so long. I think this is so far needed and long overdue. And like I said, they're going to change the name in a few years anyhow, and I'm going to retire. So that's how it works. So let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem. The CMMC AB, which is the Accreditation Board, it's a nonprofit organization, 5013C. It was set up in response to an RFI by the DoD, OUSD, now transitioning to the CIO. I think it's fully transitioned now. It is not paid for by the DoD. So they set them up, they certified them, they blessed them, but they are not being paid by the DoD. So they have a couple of organizational roles in this, as you can read. Organization seeking certification, that's everybody, right? Everybody that needs to be certified. You got the third-party auditors or assessors. You got the registered professionals as opposed to certified professionals. What's the difference? A registered professional says they know a lot about CMMC and cybersecurity. They have some background in cybersecurity, but they don't go through the process, the training, and the testing. The certified person gets all of that, and that's why they can be on audit teams and they can teach and stuff like that. There are a number of different, this slide needs to be corrected, but there are a number of different assessors. The certified CMM assessor, which is now mostly for level 2, and I'll talk about that in a minute, has to be a certified professional that also goes through the certified assessor training. In the meantime, I'm a trainer because I went through a provisional training program because the CMC program wasn't ready yet, and I was directly with, I didn't go through an LTP, I went directly with CMMC and OSD and the AB. And I'm also I'm a provisional assessor. As soon as I gave up my clearance 5 years ago, and now they want to check me out again, whatever, that's fine. So I'm going through a NAC-I. I didn't know they did NAC-Is anymore, but that's the process to go through that. So that's the difference between a registered, that is not certified, not fully trained, it's kind of self-asserted. They do go through a company background check, an individual background check, and they do sign a code of ethics, so that's all good. And you can look online at the CMMC AB at cmmcab.org, and it talks all about that. And then the registered or certified individuals, you got the certified CMMC Professional, which I teach. That test is going to be out in October. It'll be ready to go, and the professionals will be pushing out probably in October. Certified CMMC Assessor, the assessment team members, where you could pull a registered professional into an assessment. They can't lead the assessment, but they can be part of the assessment team. Much like when I was, just before I left my last company, I was asked and invited to be a technical assessor on some FedRAMP capabilities because of my crypto experience, etc. Okay. So this is where that dichotomy was. So again, we were going to assess level 1 through 5. So now, level 1 is self-assessed. We talked about that in the False Claims Act. Level 2 will be assessed by a CMMC assessment team. Level 3, which is yet to be determined, but it's on the way, will be initially assessed by the DoD. They are not singular, they are maturity. They build on each other. So when you go through your level 2 assessment, all your level 1 stuff that you self-assess will also be assessed. So it's not you get a free ride on the level 1 practices. And then level 3, you're now qualified to get a level 3 assessment by DoD until you have completed and passed a level 2 assessment by the CMMC board. That's how it is today. So next week, don't call me a liar if it changes, but that's the way it is today. I think that's the way it's going to stay for a while. I also think that they're going to start pulling in the CMMC AB in for the level 3 assessments as time goes by. I think the complaint there was some of the bigger companies, because level 3 is really more the expert level. It's more of the stuff that with analytics and stuff like that that the bigger companies are probably already on their way doing. I think their complaint, the little guys complain, wow, this is a lot of money. The big guys complaining is, we don't want a third party coming in and assessing it. Whatever. I think that's going to change because the DIPCAT doesn't have enough bodies, and they're not going to have enough bodies. And this is, you can imagine, we're talking 600,000 contractors. I don't know how many are going to lead level 4, maybe 25% of that. That's a lot of people every 3 years. That's a lot of work. Okay, so what do you got to do to get assessed at level 2? You got to dial one of the C3 PAOs, call them up, say, listen, I need an assessment estimate. You get them to do a proposal. They put together an assessment team. It's going to cost you something, so shop around. I've seen prices everywhere from not too intrusive to, oh my God. I mean, it varies. And you also want a good assessment too, right? So it's not always the cheapest guy is the best. So do your shopping. I think there are already nearly 10 C3 PAOs assigned or approved now. There's 400 in the queue. So there's a lot of people trying to get into this business. That's the other side of this presentation. I want you to know not only CMMC from, oh my gosh, it's coming, but there is an opportunity here. And I think it's an opportunity for everybody to really help our country, to help our national security and our economy, and really see some of the things that we've been trying to do for 30 years. It has been 30 years. I mean, I did the first pre-DOD PKI in the mid-'90s. We were signing contracts on smart cards in '94, and here we are so many years later, and whatever. We'll get there. Not in my lifetime, but we'll get there. So the phases of the assessment, plan for coordination and exchange of artifacts. So just like any other auditor assessment, you're going to provide the 3CPAO with artifacts. You know what artifacts are, things that you do, processes, procedures, and things like that. Then they're going to conduct an on-site assessment, and they're going to map your artifacts. They're going to say, this is what you tell me you do. Show me how you do it. Seems fair enough, right? And that doesn't mean I'm going to open up my computer and I'm going to look at this little notepad and go through it. This stuff has to be ingrained in your body. I'll tell you one of the things I did, just so you know, my company was an external certificate authority for the DoD. We did PIV, we did TWIC, we did a bunch of things. We were on the Federal Bridge and all that. And I had a very comprehensive system security plan. Like I said, I had about 5 different program gods I had to have a system security plan for. I wrote a single plan with addendums for each of the 5 or 6 programs. Everybody choked on it, right? But I went to the highest level, which actually was the DoD ECA, and I ran my shop according to that. And then I did my own on-site assessments and my own on-site diligence by, and this is literally, but not to cause any trouble, pulling the plugs on things and saying, hey, we got an outage, what are we going to do about it? So you got to live this. I was CEO, and then I sold the company, and I was just CTO. It was fine, but I was part of the process. I led that process, and that's what we got to get to. Everybody from the top dog all the way to the bottom. And I know it's tough. I mean, when I first started doing smart cards in 94, this was for the Navy acquisition PKI, NavSup, NavAir, NavAlex, NavC. I get to the private first class, not private, whatever they were, the yeomen, the kids right out of high school, right out of college, and they're on the computer and they're doing the smart card, they're doing this, doing that, and I go to the captain and I don't use this crap, right? And it was funny too, because with the CAT card, I don't know, I don't think I'm talking out of turn, but there were a number of some high-level people that used to give their CAT card to the secretary and say, here, can you sign this out for me and send this email out and all of that? All of that stuff we used to do when the XO used to sign for the captain, that all went away, right? Here's my card, go sign it for me. And we lost all kinds of accountability for a long time. Hopefully this can bring it back. Okay, so if you're familiar with FISMA and FedRAMP, you know, you're going to be familiar with the domains. This isn't rocket science. This isn't brand new. You know, I see all this new stuff coming out, like the zero trust information that's coming out of OSD and DOD and DHS. Nothing's new. It's not. We're not breaking new ground. This is all old stuff. We just don't practice it. And if you don't practice it, you don't get good, right? As my wife would say, my Yankees wouldn't be so great if they didn't practice so hard. And I said, yeah, well, I got a couple of bucks to help that. But I'm a Mets fan, and that's hard. It's hard to be a Mets fan. So, you know, it's the same things. Manage who has access, right? Multi-factor authentication. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Know what hardware and software you have on the network. What it's talking to, who's talking to what. Can somebody jump on this hardware and act like somebody else? Ensure you create logs and review them frequently. I've done some assessments where people, where do you store your logs? Well, they're somewhere over there. Well, when's the last time you looked at them? If you don't look at them, you're not going to get any benefit. And again, there's a lot of things you can automate there if you're a larger organization. Ensure your baselines and other configurations are kept up to date, right? Sometimes that's manual. Sometimes, what is that company? I forget what it is that updates all your STIGs automatically. It's a Steel Cloud. And there's different ways of doing this, but it's all the same thing. The point is, make sure you're doing it. And if you're a leader in the company, make sure you're inspiring your people to do it. If they're not inspired to do it, if they see, you know, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with your CAT card, or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with your computer, and you're not protecting your computer, or you're turning off BitLocker, whatever it is, they're going to follow suit. Everybody follows the leader. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just a couple here. Manage risk to your environment by insiders. Everybody agrees that insiders are probably the biggest problem, except they're insiders. I don't know how many people I've interviewed and say, well, what is your insider? Well, my guy, I got a really good team. Everybody's got a really good team, and everybody could have a bad day, and everybody can have some problems. So it's not an insult to back check on people. And by the way, I think at the end they end up appreciating it. Process for identifying, managing enterprise risk. And we all gone through the risk process, right? And we've all gone through the risk curve, and then we've all said, oh, see that medium high? That's going to cost me a lot of my money, so I think it's medium now. Be honest. You might not be able to do it today, you might not be able to do it tomorrow, but you're going to be able to know it's on your radar and know you have a weakness. Okay, certifications. The level 2 certification is based on the entity itself, not on a project or a contract. So you're either CMMC level 2 or you're not. It's a 3-year renewable basis. I don't know if that's going to change. For the company receive the certification material level 2, they need to, again, contact, etc. This is pretty self-explanatory. And the last bullet, very important, don't forget, your level 1 stuff will also be assessed, even though you self-assessed yourself. Documentation, nothing more to say here, much more to say here, except for there's the link for that documentation. Like every DoD program, it comes with a lot of documentation. Some of it's confusing, some of it's not intuitive, but that's okay. Take my class, I'll walk you through a lot of that stuff. And by the way, we also offer follow-up training. Follow-up training not only for your CMMC or your administrators, but also your roles people. And especially for small companies. When I had my group, you know, I did a lot of, and I had a person to do the security clearance training and the other training. Everybody doesn't have that. I mean, I'm working with mom and pop shops out in Colorado. You know, they're 3 or 5 people. They don't have a physical security rating. They don't have people that are doing nothing but training. So you got to look for, there are people like me that are doing fractional CIO, fractional training, fractional CISO type stuff. It doesn't have to be expensive. As we used to say in New York, we'll make you a good deal. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We're not trying to meet DoD requirements. We are, but that's not the end point. The end point is a path to achieving confidentiality and integrity. And we do that with availability. Now, CMMC does not specifically address availability. I talk about it because if you set up an infrastructure that's not available all the time, your IT guys and everybody else is going to try to work around it. Okay, so don't make it a task to try to figure out how to get around security. So you got to think about that, and we need it as a trusted business enabler. Again, I know everybody looks at cybersecurity as a cost, and I think that's wrong thinking. I know it's wrong thinking from my point of view. You got to think of it as a business enabler. Now, first of all, as a small business and as a larger business going after DoD contracts, it's going to be a badge of honor. Your cybersecurity badge will be important, as will your responses in your RFPs, because your M section is going to have something about your cybersecurity. All right, what level are you at? Okay, how mature is that? Where are you going next? And that's what you have to think about. It's not just, okay, I did my self-assessment, I'm done. What am I going to next? What am I going to do the next step? How am I going to mature this? If you think this is a one and go, you're not going to get there. Think of it as a journey. This is, and you know, we've avoided this journey for 30 years, but think of it as a journey. Let's get down the road and get there. What do you got to think about? You got to think about the impact on people, time, and money. I was just talking in there about the conference earlier in the last panel, and they were talking about information warfare and cybersecurity. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because when I talk to the folks at DoD, and when you support DoD's cybersecurity initiatives, there's a tactical part of that business doesn't give a rat's patoot about, right? The DoD, the FBI, the NSA, they want to know who's doing what, when they're doing it, you know, how often they're doing it. I don't care. I just don't want them in my stuff, period. So that's the kind of difference between, so those of you that are transitioning from the military into commercial, You got to think about that. You bring all of that smart stuff the military taught you, but shift that leadership into understanding businesses are in business to make money, not to know who's trying to attack them, okay? I think there are other things we can do in the commercial world to kind of share that information as much as possible. We're not there yet. CIS is trying to do that at DHS, and we were talking about that earlier. Part of the problem with all this sharing stuff is, for the most part, the government doesn't trust, they trust them to some extent, but at the end of the day, they don't trust them, right? Not to the I love you level, right? Businesses don't trust each other, right? I was a small business for many, many years. I subbed to Booz Allen and SAIC and every other letter you want to know. And as soon as they had the opportunity, they were poaching my people. They were trying to take billets away from me. So, you got to be careful. But the other side of that is, if you don't have that information immediately and you can't share it, then you have more problems. I just did a great interview with Vice Admiral McConnell, former NSA, former DNI. If you get a chance, it's on the website. If you want it, just email me. My email's on the end here. But he talks about the fact that we got to change our way of thinking. Our intelligence community is all about not sharing everything, holding everything close. His thought process is, well, if somebody's trying to hit our commercial entities, we should be telling every commercial entity in the United States, this is coming, it's coming hard, here's where it's coming from, and this is what they're trying to do. And it can be with some anonymity. I still got this slide. This is an old slide, but I'm a PKI guy, right? Smart cards, PKI, strong multi-factor authentication. I still think keys that are not protected in a FIPS 140-2 level 2 or 3, preferably 3, token are trouble. We've been through one-time passwords. We've been through all kinds of reinventing the symmetric credential. We're not getting there. And this is still true. This is a 1990-something, I can't read the small text, it's 1991, I think, cartoon in the New Yorker. And the dog's basically saying, nobody knows I'm a dog on the internet. It's the same way now. We don't know. And this is the vulnerability we have, is stolen credentials. People don't know who's touching their infrastructure. If you don't know who's touching you or what's touching you, right? When I started, it was all about people. Then about 10 years later, it was all about devices. We still haven't gotten there, right? We're still putting software on devices. Because that's what leads to all the problems. They steal they don't ransomware you immediately, right, or directly. They steal a credential, they get on your network, and then they send you a ransomware, or they send you something else, a malware, or something like that. This is still the biggest problem we have 30 years later. And don't forget, it's just not cyber, right? We have tokens that are authenticating, but we're still sticking the tokens we get on the floor here that who knows who touched, right? Because we know it's a big DOD show. Let's put something on these tokens, and you stick them in there, right? Big deal in the maritime industry. Most of the folks that come on board, and it's not always in the United States, to do maintenance on your equipment are either sticking in a cable from their computer or a USB token. You never know what they're putting on. So why aren't we using authenticated tokens? Why aren't we using authenticated machines? Why aren't strong authentication? We have this stupid TPM on here. We had this on there for 30 years. We still don't use it the way Microsoft used it to know exactly when you're not paying your bill. Why? I want to make one more point on multi-factor authentication. If you've read the recent Zero Trust guidance, I think there's something out of DOD. There's the OMB memo from January 2209. If you haven't read it, just Google Zero Trust, DOD, OMB, whatever. moving the U.S. government towards zero trust cybersecurity principles. To that end, public-facing agency systems that support multi-factor authentication must give users the option of using phishing-resistant authentication. Their example, PIV and CAC. We have an beautiful infrastructure. We have, I don't know, half a dozen companies that can provide government-approved credentials. The government's providing government-approved PIV, PIV-I, etc. I was in the middle of the e-authentication program in the 2004 period. President Bush put a lot of money into, we're going to make secure internet access for everybody, and we're going to start with 28 programs, applications in the government. Nobody enabled their applications for strong multi-factor authentication. We're still here. It's 22. It's almost 23. Okay, I'm going to go through this quickly. What is a practice? I think you probably all know about this. It's the activities you do. The domains are a collection of practices, and we saw that upstairs, up above. And then what is a practice? So practice is the what, right? How is the processes you use to enact those practices. Processes have to be procedural activities that are required and performed, right? Doesn't mean you put them in a book and you must do this and nobody ever opens that book again. You have to they got to be measurable, flexible, extensible, and repeatable. That's the most important thing. People are smart, but they're not that smart, right? You got to give them something they can do over and over and over again with consistency all the time. That includes the auditing piece, right? When do I audit my logs and my files? What do I do with that information, right? Looking at it is not the point of it. Looking at it is to do something with that information. Talk about this a lot too. You know, everybody says we're going to bring in a CISO or a CIO into the board, and that's not fair for small businesses, but we do have boards. Some of them do. I think the idea is not that you're bringing someone into the board or into the leadership team. You're bringing the leadership team into the culture of cybersecurity. That's your goal. And you have a lot of reasons to do that. You got shareholders, you got clients, you got your organization, you got your brand, and this threat isn't going away. The Chinese are pounding, the Iranians, the Russians. It's not going to go away. And they want all your information. You got to address the entire environment, from physical to operational, networks, local, networks wide, everything. Your devices, bring your own devices. You got to pay attention to everything that's hitting. And then you got to remember, I used to love all these people. Oh yeah, I'm very secure. I use AES encryption on my storage. Well, what happens when it goes across the wire? You know, what's happening in the processing? It's a multifaceted thinking process. It's not for the weak of heart. And then you got to understand the mistakes. The biggest mistake is lack of management support, right? If the leadership isn't behind this, it isn't going to happen almost every time. And I've seen IT guys and people that know what they're doing leave companies because they got no support, no budget, no way to get there. Limited review and feedback. Keep that discussion going. It's not like your bad in-law that you don't want to talk about. It's a terrible thing, but you got to talk about it all the time. Have bagged lunches. Have people come in and talk about it. Out-of-date requirements. Unclear requirements. Well, you should do this. You should maybe. Got to be clear. Got to be concise. Communications is the key. Again, bag lunches, get everybody together, have drills, pull the plug on something. You're not going to kill anybody, unless you pull the wrong plug. Know what you're pulling when you pull the plug, and inconsistent with culture. Again, if the leadership isn't doing it, if the leadership isn't supporting it, it's not going to happen. So some parting advice. So this is from the 2021 IBM Cost Data Breach Report. Cost rose from $3.8 million to $4.2 million, 17-year high, only because they didn't start counting it until 17 years ago. Average cost was $1 million higher in breaches where remote work was a factor causing the problem. Whether it's bring your own device or, I mean, I had people that didn't lock down company machines enough where BitLocker was an annoying slowdown of the machine, and people figured out how to turn off BitLocker. You know, use some controls that are hard. There are hardware controls that you can use to make it impossible for them to turn them off. And then here's my friend. We've been doing the same thing over and over again. And he knows what he's talking about. He's dead how long? He's still right. Okay, so these are questions that I want you to bring home. This is homework. Essays are due in 2 weeks. But think about these things. These are the questions we ask our CCP guys when they're looking at, and gals, when they're looking at going into their own company, doing their self-assessment, preparing for level 2 assessment, etc. And then I'll make sure that this is all provided online. Whoops. And that's my presentation. That's not my email address. My email address is turissd@educare-nova.com. I'll make sure that, I'll fix that, and I'll make sure that's available online. So call me if you have questions about this, or email me. Email me if you'd like to know more, because like I said, the CCP class is 5 days, 8 hours a day. It's exhausting. It's a lot of stuff. I think there's 850 slides. I don't write the slides, I just read them. But it's a lot of information. So I think this is going to happen. I think CMMC is serious. I'm confident we can make it work. We just need to pay attention. Any questions? Yes, sir.
One quick comment. If those in the room receiving a CU credit for this, please state that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, you're an easy group. Yes, sir.
What do you think the timetable for the government would require the CMMC
So the interim rule is in work. I'm not a DoD person, so and I'm not a DoD lawyer, right? So that's in the lawyers. So they claim assessments will be beginning in October timeframe of this year. They claim that maybe not in the DFAR formally, but in the M clause, you're going to start seeing CMMC requirements. Personally, I'd like to see the DFAR and the FAR be done, put in all the solicitations, and get on with it. But at the end of the day, if the requirement was in the books today, you're probably 12 to 18 months from even a self-assessment. And I've been through, so I've been consulting on this for about 5 years now, and I've sat down with companies and I said, okay, I'll read the requirements for a particular practice, and they said, well, are you doing that? And they'll say, oh yeah, we're doing that. I said, how are you doing that? Oh, well, we do that. I mean, people really aren't down, and so bigger companies, I think they got a lot more there. But it's hard. I mean, there's a lot to it. It's not always intuitive. And that's why it's got to be a maturity model. Again, if somebody thinks they're going to buy something or buy some consultant and they're going to be qualified in 6 months or a year, that's not, and even after you get through your self-assessment, even through you get through level 1, one of the things they're planning on doing is, so one of the things 2.0 did is downgrade, if you will, 1.0. Right? 1.0 had more controls than 171. The DoD agrees that those controls are necessary, so they're coming. They're just going to come through another process, through 171 and 172 as they're revised. So this is a process that's going to be ongoing. So what the final state of your level 2 assessment is, say in 6 months to a year from now, is not going to be the same final state a year and a half, 2 years from now. It's going to grow, it's going to mature, and you need to mature with it. So my advice is, if you haven't gotten started, you're already behind the power curve. Call somebody, get some information. If you want a class, I can point you to the right places to get the class and learn more about it, because it's going to happen. And DHS is already on board with trying to do this or something very similar. GSA contracting officers already got the contracting training to put this into the contracts. So it's moving along. Any other questions? Yeah, so the difference between FSMA and CMMC today, again, I say today because the DoD can change their mind, but right now there are no poems. I do everything but these 5 things. Oh, we'll get to that next quarter. You pass or fail. Now, if you're within a margin of error, I think it's 10% overall and maybe no more than 2 domains, then you can come back in 90 days to get a Delta assessment to complete it. But you don't get certified until you pass the controls under your level 2 requirement. Now, they're talking about initiating a POA&M. I will tell you, as a contractor, as a federal contractor, living under a POEM on FSMA, I was held to a very strict evaluation of my POEM. Whereas when I was evaluating government POEMs, you were kind of at the mercy of the customer, right? And their guy could say, well, we'll get to that next quarter. I don't know where that's going to go. I think either way, it's going to be rigorous, and I think that's good. I think that's part of the maturity process. If you're not doing this every day, I guarantee you, if you get your level 2 assessment, put it on a shelf, and worry about it in 3 years, you won't pass the next assessment without paying a lot of money. Anything else? I really appreciate you guys taking the time and listening to me. And again, this will be posted. My email will be posted. Actually, my email is also on the AFCEA website. Homeland Security Vice Chair, and I'm on the board. And I really love these things. Thank you for the service. Oh, there she is. Thank you for your service.